Every day, we send billions of photos, financial transactions, and video streams across the globe in milliseconds. It is incredibly easy to imagine this information floating through the air, bouncing seamlessly between satellites in low Earth orbit. But if the oceans were suddenly drained of their water, you'd see a sprawling spiderweb of engineered glass and steel snaking across the abyssal plains. More than 95% of all international data and voice transfers are routed through this hidden network, resting on the seafloor. These lines carry roughly $10 trillion in financial transfers every single day, linking the central clearinghouses of the global economy. Satellites account for a mere fraction of global intercontinental data traffic. They simply cannot match the volume, speed, and economic efficiency of a direct physical connection. The modern digital age, with all its wireless convenience, is entirely tethered to a physical infrastructure, operating in the most hostile, crushing environment on the planet. Crossing vast bodies of water with communication lines has been an engineering challenge since the invention of the electrical telegraph. Seawater is a highly effective conductor of electricity. Dropping a bare copper wire into the ocean instantly short-circuits the connection, dispersing the signal into the sea. The breakthrough for underwater cabling came from a botanical anomaly found in Malaya. The Palaquium gutta tree produced a milky sap that, when boiled and cooled, created a highly malleable, naturally waterproof, and flexible electrical insulator. Insulating the lines with this material allowed engineers to successfully lay the first transatlantic cable in 1858. Queen Victoria inaugurated the connection by sending a 98-word message to the United States president. But the transmission was painfully slow, taking over 16 hours to send a few sentences. Electrical pulses smear together and weaken over vast distances in a process called signal retardation. Believing brute electrical force was the answer, the project's chief electrician pumped up to 2,000 volts of electricity into the line to push the signal through. The massive voltage melted the delicate insulation, destroying the cable just weeks after it opened. Physicist William Thomson proposed the exact opposite approach. Instead of increasing raw electrical power, he radically increased the sensitivity of the receiver. He suspended a tiny mirror on a single silk thread within a magnetic coil. When even the faintest electrical current arrived from across the ocean, it twisted the magnet, deflecting a beam of light across a screen. Precision and extreme sensitivity proved vastly superior to brute force. This realization established the operating philosophy for all global telecommunications. Today, humanity no longer relies on heavy electrical currents to send data across the seafloor. We communicate using the purest medium in the universe, light. Despite carrying the combined digital output of entire continents, a contemporary deep ocean cable is astonishingly small, typically no thicker than a standard garden hose. The 25mm profile is entirely dedicated to protection, utilizing heavy steel armor, water-blocking barriers, and a copper sheath to isolate the center from crushing pressures and corrosive saltwater. The actual data travels through ultra-pure silica glass threads at the very core, each roughly the diameter of a human hair. This material is so pristine that if the ocean were composed of it, you could stand on the surface and clearly see the bottom of the Mariana Trench. Data traverses these microscopic fibers through total internal reflection. Engineers dope the central core with elements like germanium dioxide to give it a slightly higher refractive index than the surrounding silica cladding. When a laser fires a pulse of light into the fiber at a specific angle, the boundary acts as a perfect mirror, allowing the beam to navigate thousands of kilometers without escaping the core. Yet even in this pure environment, photons eventually scatter or absorb into the glass. To slip past these physical boundaries, engineers tune their communication lasers to a very specific invisible wavelength, 1550 nanometers. This precise frequency sits perfectly between scattering limits and infrared absorption, dropping signal loss to its absolute theoretical minimum. Even at the minimum fractional loss, a signal traveling across a 6,000-kilometer stretch of the Pacific Ocean accumulates that decay relentlessly. Without active sequential intervention, the pulses of laser light would fade to absolute darkness long before reaching the opposite shore. To prevent the signal from dying, Engineers splice pressure-resistant titanium alloy cylinders into the cable every 50 to 90 kilometers along the entire oceanic route. These are submarine repeaters. Inside each repeater sits an erbium-doped fiber amplifier. A secondary laser continuously fires into a short segment of the fiber that is doped with erbium ions. This constant optical energy excites the electrons within the erbium, elevating them into a highly stable, energized state. When a weakened data photon arrives from across the ocean and strikes one of these excited ions, it forces the ion to drop back to its resting state and release its stored energy. That energy is emitted as a brand new photon, an exact, perfectly synchronized clone of the incoming signal. One photon enters, two emerge, amplifying the original signal up to 10,000 times using only light. While the amplifier manipulates quantum states, the secondary pump lasers still require constant electricity to function. Massive installations on the shore, known as power feed equipment, inject up to 15,000 volts of direct current into the copper sheath wrapped around the cable's core. Every electrical circuit requires a continuous closed loop. Running a second dedicated copper return wire across thousands of miles of open ocean would double the weight of the cable and severely increase the risk of mechanical failure. Instead, the current flows out across the ocean, powers each repeater in series, and then exits directly into the sea through a massive metallic electrode. The vast volume of seawater and the Earth's crust act as an infinite, zero-resistance return path. To keep the optical heart of the Internet pulsing, engineers utilize the planet itself as a literal electrical component. Despite this heavy armor, submarine cables suffer 3 to 4 complete breaks per week worldwide. While popular myths point to shark bites as a major threat, modern polyethylene jackets and Kevlar easily break a shark's teeth. The true danger comes from human maritime activity. Commercial fishing trawlers dragging heavy nets and massive cargo vessels dropping errant anchors cause the vast majority of severed lines. To protect the infrastructure where it approaches the highly trafficked, shallow waters of the continental shelf, cable ships deploy heavy sea plows. Rather than digging traditional dirt trenches, these machines use high-pressure water jets to fluidize the seabed. The heavy cable sinks directly into the liquefied sand, and the sediment settles back down, seamlessly burying the line out of harm's way. But in the deep ocean, where cables lie directly on the silt, they are entirely exposed to severe geological events. When the Hunga Tonga underwater volcano exploded in 2022, the resulting blast and subsea mud avalanches severed the island nation's domestic and international connections, plunging over 100,000 people into digital darkness. Finding a microscopic break across thousands of miles of featureless ocean requires firing a discrete pulse of light down the broken fiber and measuring the exact time it takes for the echo to bounce back from the severed end. Once pinpointed, a repair ship hovers over the coordinates, lowering a heavy grappling hook into the pitch-black water to snare the broken ends, haul them miles up to the surface, and meticulously weld the glass back together. The illusion of seamless global connectivity is strictly maintained by a hidden fleet of maritime vessels performing constant surgical repairs in some of the most unforgiving environments on Earth. As reliance on massive cloud computing clusters and algorithmic trading explodes, the sheer volume of data is pushing solid silica glass to its physical limits. Even in ultra-pure glass, light slows down by roughly 33% due to refraction. For a high-frequency stock trade or synchronous database replication, a transatlantic delay of 60 milliseconds is an eternity. To solve this latency problem, engineers are developing hollow core fiber. Instead of guiding light through a solid core of doped glass, this next-generation cable features a microscopic core of empty air, surrounded by a highly engineered honeycomb of glass microstructures that trap the light in the center. Because the laser travels through air rather than solid glass, the signal propagates 45% faster. Shaving these critical milliseconds off intercontinental communications ensures that fixed physical cables remain vastly superior to the constant handoffs and latency fluctuations of low Earth orbit satellite networks. Every time a secure message is sent or a payment is processed halfway across the globe, that data does not simply exist in an ethereal cloud. Human civilization and our most advanced communications networks remain deeply tethered to thousands of tons of steel and billions of photons sprinting through the mud and crushing pressure of the ocean floor.